out of the way. Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to another of our virtual federal candidate forums. Today, our special guest is Theresa Greenfield, the Democratic candidate for Iowa's U.S. Senate seat, and we'll be with her in just a minute. I'm Doug Neumann, the Executive Director here at the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. Thanks for taking the time again with us today. Several of you have been on all of these forums, a couple of you joining us for the first time today. So thanks to all of you. Thanks also to several of you who took the time and the effort to submit questions ahead of time. We want to certainly get to as many questions as we can today before ending promptly at 1 o'clock. I want to say just a brief note as I have about why we do this series. Why is this work important to the Economic Alliance? You know, we're a nonpartisan, membership-based organization that's here to try to help the economy grow, the workforce grow, to help make businesses successful. And we don't endorse candidates at any level of government, but we do certainly support policies that grow our region and our state. And educating our members on the issues and where candidates stand is a very important part of that advocacy strategy. Policies that grow our population, grow our economy, grow our workforce, cover a lot of our interests, a lot of the work that the Economic Alliance does. And I'm also proud and honored to be putting on this candidate forums in partnership with Impact CR, our young professionals group. And Aaron Murphy from Impact CR joins us today, and he'll talk a little bit more about Impact CR in just a minute. Certainly, our young professionals group is an integral part of growing our region and shaping our future, and it made great sense to partner with them as we talk about critical issues in this election cycle. I want to mention for Ms. Greenfield's benefit too, this is a pretty select invite audience here today. We didn't open this up to all of membership. These are some of our most important stakeholders, some of our most important companies and community leaders here in the Cedar Rapids area. And we do that intentionally because of the Q&A. We feel like this is an opportunity maybe to get some really specific questions answered and to get into some great conversation with you. So a pretty learned audience that we've got with us today, and I appreciate everybody that's on. Our advocacy of the issues that grow our region and state tend to be pretty bipartisan. A lot of things related to economic growth and business success are bipartisan. And in the past few years, it's also become an important part of our success to be committed to political civility. We've added that to our principles document, to our agenda. And while we certainly remain always strong supporters of the First Amendment rights of all people, we encourage elected officials, candidates, and citizens to be civil in discussions and debates on policy issues and political opinions. We're committed to leading by example, and we've also been quick to point out great examples of when that happens in our region. We do have a couple of members of the media joining us today. They're here to listen as the opportunity to ask questions is reserved for the Economic Alliance member businesses on the call today. After I've gotten done introducing Ms. Greenfield, we will have a chance to hear directly from her, and then we'll have a Q&A session. I think a lot of us are getting used to these Zoom calls, right? You guys know how to do this now, but use that Q&A feature button down on the bottom of your screen to pose your questions. Again, we've got some that were submitted ahead of time, and we will get to as many as we can. So use that. And with no further ado, let me get on to this introduction. Theresa Greenfield grew up on a family farm where she and her 4 siblings learned hard work and self-reliance. Her father encouraged his daughters to do everything the boys did on the Greenfield farm. And at 16, Theresa and her sister began helping with the family crop dusting business. And with the help of financial aid and multiple part-time jobs, she put herself through college. Theresa married, and as she and her husband were expecting their second child, he was killed in an accident at his job as a union electrical worker. As a young widow and single mom of 2 boys, she relied on Social Security survivor benefits and eventually began work as an urban planner and in real estate and development in Iowa. She now lives with her husband, Steve, in Des Moines, and together they have 4 grown children. Ms. Greenfield, thanks for being with us today. I'm going to turn this over to you for some comments and remarks to our audience today.
All right. Well, thank you, Doug and Aaron, Barbara and Jordan. I know you've helped in the background there to make this event a success. It's a delight to be here. I'm actually in Cedar Rapids today, believe it or not. We got here early and are going to be leaving late, visiting with small businesses, larger businesses, labor, just a lot of meetings, including this one that's on the schedule. I want to thank the entire Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance and Impact CR for hosting this and attending, giving up your lunch hour on a beautiful fall day. You probably have other things you could be doing. I have to tell you, it is an honor. It is my honor to be running for the United States Senate. It will be even more of an honor to serve you and to serve this entire state as your next senator. I want to tell you just a little bit about me, just briefly. I'm a businesswoman. I have worked most of my career in small businesses. I'd like to say from running the bean walking cruise back on the farm, because I did that, to working my way up to being the president, most recently, of a commercial real estate company. It was a family-owned business in Polk County. It's a small business, much like the state of Iowa, where we're just a bunch of small towns and small businesses. We had 8 employees, and those 8 employees become like family. So I enjoy meeting small businesses across this state. I'm a mother of 4. Thank you very much, Doug, for mentioning that. You know what? The best part of being a mother of 4 for me right now is that I'm an empty nester mother of 4. I love that. And I'm a scrappy farm kid. As you mentioned, I grew up on a little farm outside of a town of 500. And that is where I learned to work hard and fix things and make things, you know, really look back at the end of the day to a job well done. My dad actually said on the farm, to your point, Doug, that there are no boy jobs and there are no girl jobs. There was just jobs that need to get done. And I've had that attitude my whole life. I think it's actually no different in Washington. We've got a lot of jobs that we need to get done, and we've got to stop looking at them as one job or another, but work that we need to do. Certainly here in Iowa, you know, we are going through tough times, whether it is the pandemic, which has been horrific in terms of its health and the impacts, or the economic crisis related to it, whether it's the derecho, whether it's bankruptcy rates at an 8-year high in farm country. And of course, that filters right on down to main streets and manufacturers. Families I talk to all over the state, they're worried about losing their health care, losing their jobs. Seniors are talking to me about getting gouged for prescription drug costs. And so there's a lot of work that we need to do. You know, I understand these kinds of struggles. I grew up on the farm during the farm crisis and watched so many families go bankrupt, and watched my family struggle too. I put myself through college, starting out at Iowa Lakes Community College up in Esterville, where college was affordable back then. And, you know, I got a little job at Pizza Hut, and with Pell Grants and affordable college, I was able to finish that first year debt-free, which is great. And of course, I had to rebuild my life after being widowed at the age of 24, and I didn't do it by myself. I had the helping hand of Social Security, my late husband's union benefits, and family and friends and hometown folks that helped me get restarted. I went back to college. I built a career in community planning, city planning. I worked for 14 years, probably 3 nights a week, with neighborhood groups, planning commissions, city councils, town boards, the kinds of folks you all work with to get economic development projects done. And the thing you learn real quickly is that the pothole in the middle of the street, it's not a Republican pothole, and it's not a Democratic pothole. It's a problem to be solved. And in my case, I had to solve it before the mayor called, frankly, but it still took working together. And again, I'll go back to telling you, I think Washington needs to work more like that. And then it's the small businesses that I've run, which is what I've been doing for many, many years, from economic development projects as part of providing for housing and working for a home builder, to commercial redevelopment projects, working with hundreds of small businesses as they launched, and many of them grew and expanded. I have a deep love for that. I want you to know that I intend to take every bit of my grit and resolve, and not only ask for every vote around the state, but take that grit and resolve to DC to represent you. I've done over 250 campaign events around the state. The number keeps going up quite a bit here. But I'll tell you, we can talk about issues. Healthcare is number one. We can talk about COVID and recovery for sure, jobs, the economy. But I'll tell you, an overriding theme is wanting the divisiveness to end. And so, Doug, I enjoyed hearing your comments and your organization's commitment. You called it political civility. Yes, that is a common theme if I'm in a little town of 356 or if I'm in the biggest city in this state. People want that to end, and I'm committed to working with anyone or stand up to anyone, frankly, if we can get some work done for the American people and for Iowans. So that's a little bit about me. Again, it's an honor to be running. I hope to earn your vote. But what I'm looking forward to here most importantly, of course, is our conversation. So thank you for the invitation. And Doug, I'll turn it back over to you. And let's get the conversation started.
Very good, thank you. And Aaron, I'm going to turn it straight to you to ask the first few questions on behalf of Impact CR.
Great, thank you, Doug, so much. And good afternoon to you, Ms. Greenfield. It's a real pleasure to meet you. Thank you for being here today. I am a small business owner here in Cedar Rapids. I have an interior design studio, and I'm also the current chair of Impact CR. And we are part of the Economic Alliance, and we focus on creating experiences to connect and engage young professionals to people and places in our community. And as you know, millennials and Gen Z together will make up the largest population of eligible voters in the 2020 election. However, these groups are historically having the lowest number of voter turnout. We are excited to present this forum today with the EA in the hopes that voting statistics can start to change and young professionals are better represented in the polls. There's no rules to this, so I'm just going to ask my questions and you'll have uninterrupted time to answer those. My first question is, many young professionals today carry student loan debt, causing them to put off life milestones like buying a home, getting married, starting a business, and starting a family. You have supported debt-free community college in your campaign, but should there be any additional response from the federal government as it relates to student loans?
Well, Aaron, thanks. Great question. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your courage to start your own small business, because I think it takes a lot of courage to get out there and take that risk. So thank you so much. I'm the mother of 4 of those millennials that you're talking about, and I'm constantly prodding them to get involved, not only in voting, but in leading their communities, joining nonprofits, joining groups like the Metro Alliance, where they can make their voices heard. They're our next generation of leaders. When it comes to student loan debt, well, you're absolutely right. It is now the second highest amount of consumer debt right after mortgages. And it's unfortunate, it really is. Again, I'm gonna tell you, I was the product of a progressive leader, Republican Governor Bob Ray. They invested in community college in particular. And so again, I was able to attend community college in Esterville, got a job at Pizza Hut, certainly, but came out of that year debt-free. And I think we need to get back to that kind of progressive leadership. I'm focused on trade schools, technical schools, apprenticeship programs, community college. But that doesn't help the folks that we have today, to your point. And I think one, students should be allowed to refinance their debt. The federal government should not be making money off of our students and student loans. And that'll make a big difference. I talked to too many of them that have debt at 9%. And that is just outrageous. So we need to do that. I would like to invest also in more loan forgiveness programs. We have an awful lot of need around this country and certainly here in Iowa. And that if we can encourage people to move to a location and bring their skills or train in some extra skills or skills that we need and move somewhere around the country to work off and have some of that loan forgiveness. I think that's really important, whether it's young farmers, whether it's medical professionals, whether it's teachers. But frankly, I'm open to looking at all professions, because certainly here in Iowa, we have a workforce shortage in all skills, and working together to invest in loan forgiveness, I think would be a great way to help our students. I met with a young man down in Fremont County. He wanted to move back Fremont County, by the way, is the very southwest county of the state. Maybe you knew that or not. And so he did. He moved back and is working there, making about $45,000 a year, but he has about $50,000 in debt. And so he's living at home with his parents, unable to buy a house, unable to, really get his life launched because of that debt. And we just have to find some more ways to reduce that debt, but then also make sure that we lead and invest in the next generation so they don't have that kind of student debt.
Great, thank you. My next question, lack of access to childcare and unaffordable childcare prevent young families, especially women, out of the workforce. How would you address this at a federal level to keep young parents at their jobs?
Well, I think people might think Senator Joni Ernst and I disagree on everything, but I'll tell you, childcare, I think we got a lot of room for agreement. We have a childcare crisis in this state, the Iowa Women's Foundation and others, but they have really put in the time and the effort and the research to get their arms around that crisis. And pre-COVID, to your point, we were about 350,000 spaces short. So that's the access issue, but there's certainly the affordability issue. One of the things, and believe me, I was a single mom for a while. I relied on daycare, raised 4 kids. I needed childcare. I absolutely understand that this is a family issue, but it's also a business issue, a productivity issue. It is certainly heavy on our economy when folks are missing work because of childcare related issues. And so one of the plans that I put out is called Small Towns, Bigger Paychecks. And I'm going to give you an example of how that might work. In Small Towns, Bigger Paychecks, I focus on 3 things. One, growing our small businesses, so access to capital and credit. Too many of our small businesses, maybe over half in the state, don't have access to enough credit to get through a few months or even a month of downturn, or the capital really gets started. So working on that business side so we can grow small businesses and support them. 2, the investments in education, which I already talked about. And then 3, a robust infrastructure plan. And in particular, everything from bridges to broadband internet. And we can talk about that later also. But I was out in Rembrandt, Iowa, which is in Buena Vista County, and met with a young woman who is going to Iowa Lakes Community College in Estherville, studying early family childhood education with the dream of opening a childcare center. And yet she doesn't have access to that capital to make it happen. So I think that there are opportunities when we focus on growing the small businesses with capital and the education element. Coming out debt-free would be great for her to be able to then invest in a business, which is how we help fill this need. Unfortunately, I've also met with a number of daycare providers across the state, one in Davenport, who has really been impacted due to COVID. And she's been able to reopen, but only has half of the families because of health and safety issues. And she's going to struggle to stay open. So we do need to have a phase 4 stimulus package. And I think it needs to include some help for childcare during this crisis. And then we have to continue to be collaborative, nonprofits, government, business, to make sure that we can grow our care force.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Climate change will directly affect millennials and Gen Zers like myself and our children. You have stated publicly that you do not support the Green New Deal. So what needs to be done to protect our environment and limit harmful emissions, both here in Iowa and then again at the federal level?
Well, Aaron, we have to confront climate change. We have a man-made global climate crisis on our hands, and we absolutely need to confront it. I think Iowans more and more know what climate change looks like, what it looks like right here in Iowa, which is certainly severe flooding. Cedar Rapids knows what's that about. Southwest Iowa knows what that's about. Farmers know what that's about. It's droughts, it's higher temperatures and higher humidities that affect pollination, germination and pollination. It's that planting window that's really narrowed up for our ag industry, all due to climate change. So for me, there are really 2 things that I'm focused on at this point in time. One, getting back into those global agreements and accords. This is not an Iowa climate change problem. This is a global problem that we need to be working with everyone around the globe. But then second, I'm really focused on what we can do right here in Iowa to help achieve those lower carbon goals that we have. And so it starts with a few things. One, we continue to invest in wind. We should be exporting that electricity, and I know we can if we continue to invest. That's one great opportunity, continuing to grow solar here, continuing to grow jobs. But we have a resource in this state, and that's called our land. And if you look at my Fair Shot for Farmers plan, you'll see that one of my key elements is conservation. And I want to make conservation a new commodity where we are investing in the land, the farmers, the landowners, so that they can sequester carbon through conservation techniques, improve their soil health. And the side benefits will also be that it helps clean up our water. But we have millions upon millions of cultivated acres, and it's an enormous opportunity for Iowa to really do something about keeping that carbon captured in the soil. And then I want to invest. I want to invest in new markets. What else do we grow? What else can we create? And to me, I see that as what I call bio-based manufacturing, so that we are using the resources here in Iowa to lower our carbon footprint, but also create those new products right here, creating jobs and a strong economy.
Excellent. Thank you very much. My last question is coming up next, and then I'll turn it back over to Doug. But before we get into that, thank you for your very honest answers and your candidness too. So we just talked a little bit about access to capital when we were talking about access to childcare and unaffordable childcare. Many of these economic issues that we face in Iowa today are also issues that are based in systemic racism. And already access to capital for people wanting to start their own business is very limited and difficult to obtain, but particularly for Black business owners, because they are intrinsically and systemically blocked from accessing that type of capital. How would you work to change that?
Mm-hmm. Well, you are right on, Aaron. We have to address systemic racism across all of our systems, whether it's healthcare, lending, housing, policing, education. We absolutely have to address those things and take action. When it comes to, I'm just going to go into policing at this point in time. I'm really proud of the leadership of our Black Legislative Caucus, and they led the way on the plan for a more perfect union, working with Black Lives Matter leadership. And working in a bipartisan manner, by the way, and getting that law passed and showing that when we take action, investing in racial bias training and de-escalation training, banning chokeholds and others, that we can start to work together to address systemic racism. And that was just in policing, and I think Iowa was a great example for this country. When it comes to lending, well, I currently live in Polk County, and right to your point, Aaron, I believe that Black business owners are denied loans at about twice the rate of any other population. And clearly there is racism there. And we have to, as part of small towns and bigger paychecks, make sure that that capital is available to our minority-owned businesses, our minority entrepreneurs. And there's quite a disparity. If we have 250,000 small businesses in the state, only like about 15,000 or so are minority-owned. So we have to create avenues for that and address that kind of discrimination, so all of our families can prosper. I think that investing in education for all of our students will help get everyone on that path to either earning a living wage or starting their own small business, because they'll come out of those first 2 years debt-free, at least if I get to have anything to say about it.
Excellent. Well, yeah, thank you again very much. And I'm gonna turn off my video. Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Ms. Greenfield. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron, and thanks for your leadership.
Aaron, great job. Thank you, and I appreciate this partnership on these forums. So, Ms. Greenfield, I want to jump into a bunch of other issues. And then I'm also watching, again, for participants, if you want to add questions to the Q&A in addition to the ones that have already been submitted. We've got people filtering those questions as well. I want to start, some of these are pretty heavy, pretty serious topics. I want to make a couple of them a little bit lighter as well. When you think about governance and the opportunity to be there in the Senate, sometimes people's very first bill that they file can either be because there's some urgency perhaps, but a lot of times it's just symbolic. You know, it says, hey, this is something that's most important to me. I don't know if you've given any thought to that or not. We're right in the throes of the campaign and not yet to governance, but if you have, what do you think your first bill, your first issue, kind of the very first thing that you're going to do when you get over there would be?
Well, Doug, I'm looking forward to having that problem because my first bill might be like 10 of them. But I will tell you that the very first bill I think that I would like to sponsor, draft, would be to really end political corruption. I think that there are too much money in our politics and it affects our ability to get anything done. And the very first plan that I put out on my campaign was to do just that. And it focuses on a number of things. Ending Citizens United. I don't think corporations are people. Ending dark money groups. Now, these are the groups that run all those nasty attack ads that ruin your YouTube videos and ruin your Sunday football. I've seen it. We need to end all of that. Those are dark money groups, or at the very least require that they disclose who and how much they're donating. And then finally end corporate PAC donations too. Again, corporations aren't people. They donate to influence our elected leaders. And I've taken a pledge not to accept one dime of corporate PAC donations. I got in this fight to put Iowa first, put our hardworking families first, our small businesses first. And I think that's could help us get to the bottom of how we lower prescription drug costs, you know, how we treat our, uphold our ethanol industry, for example. There's so many ways that I think political corruption has happened, and it starts with the money. And I'd like to end that so we can roll up our sleeves and work together to solve so many problems that we have or issues that we need to tackle here for our country.
I'm curious too on the topic of governance and how you would work for us as a senator. Have you given thought to what committees you would like to serve on and why? Again, I think it gives us a little glimpse into where your efforts would be, where your time would be spent if you are representing us as our senator.
Thanks, Doug. That is a fun thing to talk about. There are so many committees I personally would love to serve on. But there are three that I think are probably really important and of course would love your feedback. I mean, where would you like to see your next senator be serving? One, of course, Ag Committee. I think that is between all of our, not only producers, but all of our ag-related industries here, manufacturer-related, ag-related industries. That would be a great place to start. Two, I would like to sit on the HELP committee also, you know, for health, education, labor, pensions. You know, I think it's a real hardworking, bread and butter kind of committee that affects people's lives. Education, I've been talking about that a lot today. And then finally, I've been running small businesses. I'm a tad of a geek when it comes to financials. And so, you know, I'm going to ask to be on the appropriations committee. I really want to be at the table and talk about where those dollars are going and why.
Great. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned small business several times already in our time. What are your top priorities for small business if you're elected?
Mm-hmm. Well, first and foremost, we are in an economic crisis. And I think we have to deal with that economic crisis. We have to meet that challenge head on. And as I said earlier, Iowa is clearly a state of small towns and small businesses. Half of our workforce work in small businesses, and half those small businesses don't have credit enough to get through these kinds of tough times. I have been crisscrossing the state and virtually crisscrossing, also meeting with small business owners, well, meeting with business owners too. And it is really devastating to hear so many of them tell me that their cash flows are down, 60%, 80%. I met with a business this morning, 75% is what they're down. And a lot of these folks don't think they're going to have their lights on after the first of the year. If you run a small business, it's clear that your employees become like family, and every small business owner is worried about their employees losing jobs, being able to pay their rent or their mortgage, paying to buy groceries. So I think, one, we need to have a significant phase 4 stimulus package. I've certainly been calling on Washington to get that done for months. And small businesses are on the top of that list, of course, with additional support. And then 2, after that, I again see small businesses as a backbone of Iowa's economy. And it gets back to my small towns, bigger paycheck plan of capital investment, workforce development, so folks can have those skills to earn living wages or start their small businesses, and then investing in that infrastructure. We have too many parts of this state, too many families, students, farmers, entrepreneurs who don't have access to high-speed internet. And I think that just makes an unlevel playing field when it comes to growing a business in more rural areas or underserved areas. When I do know lots of folks would like to go back and work. I met a graphic designer, for example, who drives an hour into Des Moines for work. She could work from home, but she does not have the capacity to upload and download those large graphic files. And so I think, we're leaving a lot of business on the table and a lot of entrepreneurship on the table by not having that access to the high-speed internet. We need to have a robust infrastructure plan. I'm going to throw an elbow to both parties for not getting that done, because I think for rural states like Iowa, it helps to level the playing field for us when it comes to our business community.
I want to peel that apart just a little bit more on the fourth potential for a fourth stimulus bill. I think that the thing that catches the most headlines and maybe mainstream media attention is certainly the PPP, and it's been very, very critical. I mean, we're huge supporters of that. We've heard lots of stories from our businesses about how important that is. But there's been a lot of other things in the CARES Act, and I'm looking at the participants here today and thinking about the support that our airport got, the support that our hospitals got, the support that may or may not be coming for nonprofits, the support that higher ed got. Are there, beyond the top line things that we're all aware of on the stimulus bill, if we were going to get some but not all of what's been discussed, what are your top priorities? How do you start delineating what may get some help, and beyond just the kind of the obvious on the PPP, but maybe to some of those industries that I just mentioned?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I really put it into 3 buckets, Doug, really 3 buckets. The first bucket is we have to continue to focus on health and safety. We have to have testing, tracing, PPE. I still talk to nurses who tell me they don't have enough PPE. And so we can't have enough. We've got to make sure that we're investing in those kinds of things. And we need emergency temporary standards to make sure that every business, regardless of what it was, understands how they can open safely, and then make sure they have the resources to do that. Second, I think we invest in our workers. And so I'm looking for that bucket of investment. We have unemployment rates at the highest since the Great Depression. And these are hardworking folks. They're unemployed for no fault of their own. We need to make sure they're able to pay their rent and their mortgages and keep their families afloat while we work through this economic crisis. So extending that expanded unemployment, maybe direct aid again to workers, those temporary standards, things that really are going to help our working families get through this. And then number 3 is the economy, jobs, businesses. So PPP is absolutely one of those things. We can talk about all the different industries, whether it's airports or biofuels, that's fine. I think something we don't talk enough about though is our local communities and direct aid to the local communities that need it. I've had the opportunity to reach out to mayors across this state, and many of them are really struggling with their budgets. And that's where our police officers and our first responders and our water systems and our sanitary sewer systems are operated. They are the ones that really address our public health and our public safety. And I want to make sure, if they're struggling, that they're able to get direct aid to be able to serve our communities. And I don't think we talk about that quite enough, Doug.
Yeah, it does seem to be one of the contentious pieces of whether that's in or out.
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch quickly on kind of a rapid fire list of some of the kind of the standard issues maybe that you get asked a lot, but I think it's important for our audience to hear this as well. Affordable housing. It's not what we're seeing here in our market is certainly it's not just about low-income folks that are struggling. Housing prices are problematic to a lot of young workers, people that we're trying to recruit to jobs here. Is there a federal government role to play in helping increase the stock and supply of affordable housing?
Mm-hmm. Doug, there is a federal government role to play in helping increase the stock and supply of affordable housing. And we need affordable housing from folks that are just getting started and renting housing, all the way up to our seniors and independent folks that need some independent living and everything in between, move-ups, family housing, and we need it all over the state. I've talked to mayors who, have businesses that want to expand, but they don't have the housing or the workforce. I talk to, all kinds of folks in terms when it comes to housing across the state, big communities, rural communities. One of the things I think we need to do is, one, we need to have a USDA Undersecretary for Rural Development, someone that's going to be an advocate for rural states like Iowa, and we'll be fighting for those resources and those programs to help with housing. That's fundamental to rural development. It's one of those key quality of life, economic development issues for communities, and I certainly worked on it over and over again as a city planner, trying to meet those needs, balance communities, families, and our business community. So we do have a role. We should be leading on that, and I'll look forward to working on it.
Yeah. An issue that we've spent quite a bit of time on, advocacy, and it feels like there should be bipartisan support, and it feels like we should make progress, and yet we don't, is immigration. For us, it's a workforce development, workforce growth, population growth issue. We've been very supportive of a number of the reforms. We've worked hard on those and let our representatives know our positions on those. Tell us your thoughts on immigration reform and what you'd like to see Congress do.
Doug, we need to modernize our immigration system, and whether I hear that plea, frankly, from economic groups like yourself, whether I hear it from businesses across this community, whether I hear it from associations like the Egg Council, we need to modernize our immigration system. I like a lot of the goals that have been put forth by the Iowa Compact on immigration. It's a bipartisan organization.
We're part of that.
Oh, well, there you go. You know what I'm talking about. But I think it's a great way to get us started. Three things, I'll summarize it up. Modernizing our visa system, making sure that those processes are streamlined, whether it's DACA recipients and their path to citizenship, whatever that process is. So we are making sure we're meeting our workforce needs. Second, public safety. Of course we have to be safe, but we also have to be smart about that and where we invest and how we invest. And then three, keeping families together. This has to be a humane system. I will tell you, if I've talked to police chiefs around the state, they'll tell you when families immigrate together, they put down roots in our communities. They start those small businesses. They become part of our faith communities. And of course, when it comes to workers and retention, when you've got your family and you start to put down those roots, it's more successful for our businesses too. We have a real workforce shortage in this state, and it's keeping us from growing. It's keeping manufacturers that are being successful from doubling their size, and it's keeping ag from being successful. I visited an elevator just this week, and they were talking about the need for welcoming new Iowans, immigrants that want to do some of that hard work, good work, farm work. And so I think there's a real consensus that Iowans want to welcome new Iowans, and we need to continue to push our federal leaders to take on this issue to benefit our economy and to grow our communities.
I'd add, I know I'm just supposed to be asking questions today, but sometimes I can't help myself to jump into a real quick advocacy point. But I think it's counterintuitive to some people right now with higher unemployment rates that we're still in need of workers. But we talk to businesses every day. 1,200 members of the Economic Alliance. We've done outreach and had engagement with virtually every one of those since COVID began. And the need for some of the skill-based things, matching the skills, getting the skills, but even just the need for people, it still exists. And we fight that a little bit because I think people maybe don't think that that's a problem anymore when you've got 6 or 7 or 8% unemployment, but it absolutely is. So
doesn't matter what business I talk to. You can be in the trades, you can be in science, you can be in ag, healthcare. There is a need for workers, but there's a clear mismatch between the skills that folks have and the skills that are needed in our economy. And I'll tell you, I think the quickest way we start to fill that skills gap is we make sure we invest in debt-free trade school, technical schools, community colleges, where folks can have a clear path out of high school to get those skills or come back for retraining. And in a very short period of time, be able to fill one of those jobs and provide for your families too, by the way. And so I just see that investment as critical to particularly a state like Iowa, where we have that mismatch in workforce and we need to grow our workforce so our businesses and economy can continue to grow.
Yeah. I've got several questions here related to infrastructure. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions kind of wrapped in together, and hopefully you can touch on a couple of different points here. Infrastructure investment is, again, one of those issues that you hear bipartisan support for. You hear people on both ends of the aisle talk about the need to invest in infrastructure. There's been some proposals out there. We're strong advocates of that. A couple points. One, we'd encourage people to think about infrastructure as broadly as possible. Streets and bridges seem to be the first out of everybody's mouth, but for us, it is airports, it's rail, it's ports, it's broadband, as you already mentioned, right? Infrastructure can mean a lot of things, and we just encourage our lawmakers to think about that broadly when you're talking about infrastructure investment. And then also, might parts of these investments, such as airport aid and broadband, be included in the stimulus package or in an infrastructure package? But then the related question, man, this stuff gets expensive fast when you look at infrastructure bills. And some thoughts on how we might pay for and be able to afford what could be a massive infrastructure bill.
Well, again, I certainly have, really thrown a couple elbows at both parties for talking about infrastructure, but not getting it done. And they need to get a robust infrastructure plan done. I'll certainly be fighting for it because while you gave a long list, how about locks and dams? We need that too. So there is an enormous amount of infrastructure investment that we need to make and can make. And as someone who's run businesses, I understand that investments in capital are how you grow. And it's not always done with cash. You've got to be able to go out there, borrow that money and invest to grow. And infrastructure investment will set up our economy, whether it's here in Iowa or across the country, to compete globally and to compete and win. Right now, unfortunately, that's not the position we're in, and certainly not in the position here in Iowa, where a price of corn is maybe a little under $3.50 a bushel right now. That's not making a lot of money prices. We don't have that infrastructure plan. We're fighting about the post office. We got too many kids without broadband internet. We need to get back to the basics that we can all agree upon and invest in infrastructure. So how do we pay for it? Well, I will tell you, I wouldn't have voted for the tax bill that increased our debt $2 trillion. I think that that was wrong. But there are ways we can pay for it. One, we talked about Medicare, allowing them to negotiate to bring down those costs. It'll put some bucks back in our seniors' pockets. They need it. And it'll save us as taxpayers about $500 billion. That's a lot of dimes. Second, I think we need to end some of those corporate loopholes that have allowed jobs to be shipped overseas. We need to bring that stuff back to America, and that will help to grow our economy, which of course will raise more resources for those investments. And then there's all kinds of things within our tax bill, I think, that take money that I don't think is as important as infrastructure. For example, Big Pharma gets tax credits so they can run TV ads. End those kinds of tax credits and take those dollars and invest them in infrastructure, which is going to help communities and businesses like yours grow.
Very good, thank you.
You bet.
I'm curious if you're elected, how you will work with Senator Grassley. Where do you see eye to eye with the senator? What things can you imagine that you will be a strong working team on?
Thanks, Doug. You know, I think Senator Grassley and I will have a great working relationship. And I think it's a relationship that really reflects the independence of Iowans, not only how they think, but how they vote. Remember, for 30 years, we had Democratic Senator Tom Harkin and Republican Senator Chuck Grassley working on our behalf. And so I'm looking forward to working with him. I think first and foremost, he has a bill right now to lower prescription drug costs, put some caps in place. I think that's one we should get to the Senate floor and have some voting up and down on, because it's bipartisan and we can make that happen. Continuing to work on healthcare, telehealth. One of the things that has happened in COVID, we've expanded telehealth. We need to expand it even further. And I think Senator Grassley and I could work together on that. Rebuilding our markets around the world. Haphazard trade, reckless tariffs have been devastating, and not just for our farmers, but that's an obvious place to point that out. But I met with a small business up in Elkader that exports lumber, raw lumber. And I'll tell you what, their business has dwindled because of those tariffs and those trade policies. So I think Senator Grassley has seen how the go-it-alone approach has been damaging to so many businesses, including ag. And I think we could roll up our sleeves and work together on rebuilding those markets and policies. And we can still hold China accountable, by the way. They're not just a bad actor to the US, they're a bad actor around the world. But I think that is also a third place where we easily could work together.
Very good. I want to. There's a little bit of a long question, but a couple important numbers in here, and it's about federal budget deficits and sort of the state of both the debt and the deficit. There's a very recent report that projects a federal budget deficit of $3.3 trillion in 2020, more than triple the shortfall of just a year ago. Obviously, much of that is due to the legislation enacted to combat the economic disruption caused by coronavirus. A lot of that we supported. I think people understand why and how that happened. And yet, when you look at statistics like the federal debt held by the public is projected to rise to 107% of GDP by 2023, the highest in the nation's history, those get to be pretty scary figures to people that look at things like government spending and debt. How do we get this under control? How do we reduce the debt? How do we ultimately get back to something close to a balanced budget?
Mm-hmm. Those are really great questions. They really are. And again, I certainly would not have supported the tax bill that increased the debt by $2 trillion. And I think that as a country, we didn't get back what we needed to grow as a country. So when I want to make investments, I want to make investments, if we're going to be adding to the debt, that are going to help all of us grow. Airports, roads, locks and dams, high-speed rail, broadband internet. So those things will support a robust economy, robust business development, entrepreneurs. That kind of investment is something we have to do. And right now, of course, with the treasuries as low as they are, now is a great time to do that. On the flip side of that, we have to continue to do a little bit better job at looking at where we can tighten the belt. And for one, I gave the example of, getting rid of those tax credits that go to big pharma so that they can run TV ads. That's not something that's going to help all of our businesses grow. That's an investment that helps one particular business. I want to invest in a way that helps all of our economy grow. And buying American, again, enacting that or following through on that is another great way. We should be using our own iron and steel and our manufactured products here first and foremost if we can, not skirting requirements for that, because that helps create jobs and grows our economy, which produces income, revenue, that helps us make those investments then in the infrastructure that we all need to be successful. So I think we have to take a look at the entire debt and deficit, continue to grow and invest, but look to where we can tighten the belt if needed.
We've had a fun question that we've been asking to the incumbents. It's a little bit different and a little bit harder to ask this of the challengers, but I want to try to ask the question. The question we've been asking to the incumbents is, who's your best friend on the other side of the aisle, and what kind of things do you talk about? So I guess maybe I would phrase the question to you to try to get at that same spirit. And maybe we have to sort of discount Senator Grassley. He can't be your answer here. But when you get to the Senate, who on the other side of the aisle would be the first person that you would go and talk to? And what would you ask him or her? What would you talk to them about? Again, you get the spirit of the question, however you want to answer that, kind of driving at this bipartisan, cooperative working, collaboration kind of a thing.
Well, thanks, Doug. Not fair that you excluded Senator Chuck Grassley. I'm just going to just put that right back on you, because that's exactly where I'll go first. And look forward to it. It'll be an honor. So let's see, I don't know the people on the other side of the aisle. So I'm going to throw one out here that's probably a little bit of a curveball. I think I would go talk to Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. I think that she has shown some political civility. I think she's shown some independence in her votes. She ran as an independent, a write-in independent for the state of Alaska, and won and gets reelected. I think that when it comes to thinking about how we end divisiveness and how we can work together, I suspect that she's got some pretty good ideas, and I'd like to go visit with her. She's also a woman that's been leading in the Senate, and so would love to get some of her sage advice there too. As a freshman senator, coming in the door, I think that she'd have a lot to teach me.
Yeah, great. That was a good answer. I appreciate that. So back to an issue-based question that I want to get to. This is, comes up again and again, and it was asked again today by one of our members. This is phrased as a small business issue, but really it's an all business issue related to health insurance. Small businesses in particular, many want to provide health insurance for their employees and their families, but costs continue to rise every year as businesses struggle to keep this benefit a low-cost expense for their employees. What are your ideas to tackle the high cost of health insurance?
Mm-hmm. Healthcare, number one topic. I hear, and here it is again today. And to your point, sometimes it's from a business perspective and their cost. A lot of times it's from the individual perspective, their cost. A lot of times it's an issue. Maternity units, labor and delivery units closing, or mental health care, addiction care, rural care. I know too many folks that already drive 20 miles to get the health care they need, or get to a grocery store, or get to their church. And so we have to take a look at healthcare. This morning I met with a small business, and I asked her what's one issue I could roll up my sleeves and get to work on. And it was healthcare and the cost of healthcare for her to provide for her employees. For me, I think how we get started is we have to strengthen and enhance the Affordable Care Act. We've learned a lot over the 10 years. We know that we got over 1 million Iowans that have pre-existing conditions. We need to make sure we're taking care of them. But it's not just that. It's making sure we get coverage for prescription drugs and mental health care and maternity coverage for our young families that are starting out, and make sure that we protect Medicaid expansion, which has been a lifeline to hospitals, and particularly rural hospitals, but to all of our hospitals. I also think then we have to build in a public option. We have to create competition and drive those prices down, but also make sure that everyone has access to that health care, so that the real small businesses, well, any business for that matter, just that everybody has an option where they can get high quality and access to affordable health care.
I want to squeeze one last question in here. We're just about at the end of our hour in our time. It would, and you did touch on this when we talked about the stimulus bill already, but I think it would be odd to leave our hour and not have asked a direct question about coronavirus. So my question related to that, how can we as a country be better prepared for the next time, as many health officials warn us, and scientists would warn us, there could very well be a next time, a next pandemic. What can we do to be better prepared? How can we help ensure that America is able to respond quickly and effectively?
Yeah. Yep. Thanks, Doug. Well, I believe that this coronavirus pandemic, the health crisis, economic crisis are probably going to be one of the most consequential events in my lifetime. We've watched the drop in the GDP. We've seen the unemployment numbers, and tragically, not only infection rates, but the lives that have been lost. And we need to be prepared. I think that we had some preparedness. We had pandemic planning. I'm not sure we executed it well. And I think that we have to make sure that we continue to plan and prepare, and that we're ready to execute on the advice of public health officials. These are the kinds of things where the politics have to be left out of it. Lives have been lost because I believe that we just have not executed in a way that we needed to when it came to this pandemic. And you're absolutely right, Doug. There'll be another crisis. There always are. I don't know when it'll be, and I hope it's not for generations. But we have to plan, and we have to honor ready when this kind of crisis happens again.
I want to remind the participants on the call today that we did record today's session. We have Representative Finkenauer next Tuesday, and I would invite you back for that session. That'll be the 4th, so we'll have done both of the Senate candidates and both of the 1st District candidates. Once all 4 of those are done, we will post all these videos. So if you saw something today that you want to pass along to employees or to others, you'll have that opportunity to do that. I also want to just say, and I don't think I need to say it to this audience, but thank you for being educated citizens, and certainly take seriously your responsibility to vote, to be an educated voter as we're in election season here. So thanks to all of you for doing that and for taking that job seriously. To you, Ms. Greenfield, thank you for spending time with us today, for making this a priority, talking to the business community here in Cedar Rapids. We sure appreciate that, and appreciate the time and the great information that you shared with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to introduce myself. And of course, I hope to earn your votes.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.